Comic Book Savant, episode 456. Welcome back to the Comic Book Savant podcast. I'm your host, James Harris. This episode, we're going to be doing a trade review, and I'm going to be reviewing Lando Double or Nothing. But before we get into that, as always, I'd like to give a shout out to my friends over at the Comics Podcast Network, which you can find over at comicspodcast.com. It's just a great resource if you like what I do here and you want to find more comic book related content to consume via audio podcast and even some video shows as well. It's a one-stop shop landing page where you can literally find hundreds of different podcasts and content related to comic books, be it via a single person podcast like myself, a roundtable discussion, a two-person. And you can find podcasts broken up into any type of genre based on a particular publisher or a character, team, what have you. So many different varieties and types of podcasts out there to find through the Comics Podcast Network. Definitely, if you have a moment, go check that out. It's comicspodcast.com. And it can also be a great resource if you're starting your own comic book related podcast and you want to try to get a bigger following. You can also contact the administrators to see about joining the Comics Podcast Network and basically hopefully grow your listenership. That was the whole basis in which we came together to create the Comic Podcast Network, to help promote one another by cross promotion and building it up as its own platform that it has worked. And again, it's literally hundreds of members. So definitely, if you have a moment, check that out. Now back to the main topic at hand, which is this graphic novel, again, Lando Double or Nothing. I actually picked this one up as part of the Comixology Unlimited. I subscribe to that on a monthly basis, and it was one of the books I could check out as far as the Unlimited service was concerned. I was curious about it. I can't remember if I finished reading the other Lando series at all. That one was written by Charles Soule. This particular one serves kind of as a prequel to where we find Lando in the Solo movie from a couple years ago. So we're dealing more so with the Donald Glover version of Lando. They did an earlier series. I think it was also a 4 or 5 issue miniseries that was written by Charles Soule that deals with Lando. It's a prequel to where we find him in Empire Strikes Back from the original Billy D. Williams version of the older version of Lando. So this was definitely interesting. I didn't necessarily know how to take it. It caught my eye. I've been a big fan myself personally of the majority of the Marvel Star Wars books that have come out. They've had some really strong ongoing series, and they've done a ton of different limited series. Some hit better than others. This one is kind of middle of the road, and when I get further into the review, I'll get into that further. But again, this is Lando Double or Nothing, published by Marvel Comics. It retails for about $8.99. It's written by Rodney Barnes. Artwork is done by Paolo Villanelli, and colors is done by Andres Mosa, and lettering is done by Joe Caramagna. And again, this is, if I'm not mistaken, this is a 5-issue miniseries that came out, like I said, to serve as a prelude or prequel to where we find Lando going into Solo. And it kind of ends in a really cool way of where, like, literally the last panel of the page is the first shot we see when Han meets Lando for the first time in the movie. So it's like literally a prequel leading up to the moment we see him on screen for the first time in that film, which I thought was really kind of cool because I didn't know when it was going to fall in the timeline, but how the book actually ends, it sets that up really nicely. That it's if you liked Solo, I thoroughly enjoyed Solo. Some people, didn't like it nearly as much. I thought it was a really cool add-on piece to that series, which was neat to see. Now, though I enjoyed the Solo movie, I I was conflicted on the take of Lando by Donald Glover. Now they've doubled, not to be funny, but they doubled down with this miniseries to reinforce everything we saw in the movie, because that is canon. This story's canon. So it made me accept it. At first, reading like the first issue, it took me a while to kind of switch my mind that I wasn't getting the Billy D Lando that I grew up with. I was getting the newer Donald Glover take on it. Once I accepted that, I really had fun and enjoyed the series. I'm not familiar with Rodney Barnes as a writer, but I felt like he captured the essence of that character very strongly. To if you saw that movie, that's the Lando that you got. Even with Paolo's pencils, it looked like the Donald Glover character. He had and that was the first time I've been exposed to his artwork as well. And I thought he had a very solid style throughout the series. It was very clean, upbeat, had a kind of cartoony feel. I was trying to think of someone that his style, a more notable artist that his style reminded me of, and it was kind of John Byrne-ish, with a little bit softer edges, a little bit more rounded curves, reminiscent of maybe a young John Byrne, maybe even Alan Davis. Very smooth curved lines, softness to his lines, not super hard edge, straight edge where you would have like an Eric Larson or a Jim Lee. He had a softer pencil, very rounded curves, which, like I said, I enjoyed it. And I'm big on consistency. He was consistent throughout. As far as what I could tell, I didn't see any pickups or any fill-in artists. He did the artwork, did a really good job throughout, and I would love to see him do more work. Like I said, this is the first thing I saw of his, but like if I saw him on a book, at least I know he's going to bring quality art to the table for sure. Let's see. And like I said, the more it does take an adjustment, and because like I said, I don't know how most other people felt about the Donald Glover's take on Lando. So that does, like I said, takes a little bit of getting used to. It's a great story. They set a lot of seeds up here that you see the transition. Seeds are being planted here that set up what we know Lando to be from the original trilogy. So I did like that, because this rendition, like I said, we had no idea of till we saw the Solo movie. So like I said, it was jarring for some people, I know for myself, but coming through it at this point where we are with this series, I accepted it, and I wouldn't mind coming after, coming off the heels of this miniseries and this trade. I wouldn't mind seeing this team follow up and do another like 5-issue miniseries that we pick up Lando maybe after the events of the Solo movie, and do another like little story arc similar to this. I would really like that. And I think, I don't know what the numbers were on this, how well it sold. Like I said, this is something I would buy. It wouldn't be anything that I would run out and be like, it's at the top of my stack. Like I said, I'm very frugal about how I spend my dollars, but I think it's solid enough. I necessarily don't know if I would buy this at full price. I would definitely, this is something that I would more likely would pick up if it was a sale and I could get this. Sometimes Marvel has sales where you can get trades for like $250, between $250 and like $4. I'd probably pay half price for this, and I definitely think it's a solid read. Like I said, I've enjoyed a lot of the Marvel Star Wars books. I actually even own the trade for the first original Lando series they did. That's like I said, prequel to Lando going into Empire Strikes Back, if I remember correctly, or it might be actually after. It's been a while since I read it. I might need to revisit that and do a review, because I don't think I ever reviewed it on the channel. So that might be coming up, and I think that one's just called Lando. I definitely would enjoy seeing a follow up series because I think this team really caught the spirit and the tone, it gave me everything I really enjoyed from Solo. It was different. It was a little bit lighthearted. Had the comedy, still had good action, still had that like swashbuckling element that you would expect from the original trilogy of movies. You got that vibe. It took me back to that nostalgic. It was a nostalgic thing where it hit that nostalgic bone for me, which really made it worth the read. And I would have to give it a rating on my rating scale. I have must buy, good read, wait for the trade, subpar read, and skip it. I would say this is a wait for the trade. Like I said, this is not something that would be top of the stack for me. But if I caught this on sale, I would definitely add it to my collection of Star Wars books. So I give it a 6.75 out of 10. This is a fairly solid read, but I would have to preface it in this manner that it would not be for everyone. If you're not a huge fan of the Solo movie or Donald Glover's take on Lando, then you're not gonna like it, but if you enjoyed that film and enjoyed his take, I think if you're a fan of the character and that interpretation of the character, that just adds on more. It just adds on another layer, and seeing what kind of what the circumstances were leading up to why Lando was on that planet, and it sets up so much that leads into the movie. So it fits in so, like, it was so well constructed to, like, oh, that explains it. So then it makes you, like, after you read it, want to then go back and watch Solo, which I haven't done yet, but I might be doing that soon because, like I said, it set everything up so perfectly with it. But that's all I have on the side of the review for this episode. This is not going to be a super long episode of the show, but I did want to talk about a few things. I apologize so much for last week's episode. I've talked about it a little bit through the Facebook group. If you guys still haven't joined, why haven't you joined? It is facebook.com/groups/ the Savant Society or Savant Society. We have a great time over in the message or in the group. I'm going to say message group, but in the Facebook group. It is facebook.com/groups/ the Savant Society. And thank you guys so much for letting me know about the audio issues with the last episode of the podcast, which I apologize for so much. I mentioned that I upgraded. I finally got my computer upgraded. I was switching over. My settings were all screwed up in GarageBand, so I totally thought I had everything under control. I thought I had tested the audio before I uploaded the podcast to the server. Clearly I didn't, and I think after 15 seconds it totally faded out. You guys let me know. I got it fixed. Now I know I have some new listeners that, because I upload the new episodes of the podcast to the my YouTube channel, and some only exclusively listen to the podcast through the YouTube feed, and they wouldn't have gotten the last episode. So if you're wondering why you have this episode and you don't have that one, it would not let me re-upload it to YouTube from my podcast service. I use Libsyn. Once I made the corrections to the audio, it wouldn't re-upload it, and I was trying to find a way to force it to do so, and I could never do it. So if you want that episode, you can just go to comicbooksavant.com, and that episode's there. You can listen to it straight from the website without any issues. But everything should be back on track with this episode and going forward. I've recently upgraded my software, so this is the first episode I'm using Logic Pro X, so it might be some growing pains. And like you said, if you hear anything off or the volume's too low or anything like that with the quality of the podcast, let me know. Like I said, I've done a major update to my whole office situation, early Christmas presents, and finally bearing down and saving up and just upgrading everything, like pretty much not too much except for my microphone and my monitoring headset that I listen to myself when I record the episodes to are actually still the same. I think everything else has been upgraded in one form or another. So it's going to be a slight learning curve with that. But again, thank you guys for letting me know so quickly so I could get it turned around as quickly as possible. Like I said, I strive to do quality shows as much as possible. And I was quite embarrassing uploading the episode and being like, yeah, I heard like 15 seconds and then it just went away. And I was like, I thought I did something wrong. And I was like, no, it was all me. And I felt so bad. So again, thank you guys for bearing with me through that. Everything should be back on track. We should be back on schedule going forward. I'm going to try to get some episodes in the can this week to run up and through the holidays, so you guys will still have plenty of Comic Book Savant to listen to. If you guys haven't already, consider becoming a Patreon. I have an additional podcast on the Patreon feed. From contributing as little as $1 a month, you get access to that feed, and there's also other tiers incorporated in it and other bonuses. So again, if you like the content in which I'm doing and you want to help support the show, that's one easy way to do it, through Patreon. Again, you can get access to the bonuses for as little as contributing $1 a month. But you can find that at patreon.com/comic book savant. Also, don't forget to follow me on social media, Twitter and Instagram. It's just at Comic Book Savant. Give me a follow there. And also, like I said, check out the Facebook group as well. And that's all I have for you guys for this episode of the podcast. You guys have a good week. Stay safe. And I will talk to you soon. Take care.